Hello, my name is Ash and I like to draw. And do you know what else I like? Drawing spooky things around Halloween. As you know from some of my other videos, I love playing indie horror games. And I do have a special fondness for mascot horror. And yes, I know it's a genre that a lot of people have strong opinions about, like, oh, it's just a lazy premise to make a quick buck, but I mean, you could say that about life simulators, job simulators, 2D platformers, Spot the Difference, Hidden Object, or really any indie game genre that becomes remotely popular. You know, like the 50 or so Resident Evil clones that come out every other week. Which I also absolutely love, by the way. But mascot horror is just very appealing to me. Trying to straddle the fine line between intentional whimsy and unintentional horror can really create some interesting visually striking characters. It's kinda similar to why I like slasher villains so much. I like to see what kind of different characters people can come up with using the same little handful of tropes. And I thought that since it's spooky season, it's about time that I came up with a few of my own. So, as I've done before, I created a sheet with a bunch of traits that I've observed from the various mascot horror games I've played. Then I either let my viewers pick and choose from the list in order to give me a prompt, or I simply roll some dice. The three categories to choose from are format, that is the kind of media or location the mascot represents, species, the actual person, animal, or other thing that the mascot is supposed to resemble, and personality, the mascot's overall intentions and backstory, from simply just being evil and sadistic to being misunderstood and tragic. And let's just say that the results have been interesting. But that's enough stalling. Let's get drawing and let the mascots loose. Our first mascot was chosen by viewers on one of my art streams, and they ended up choosing a sports mascot of an other species that is actually helpful to the player rather than being outright malicious. Similar to a character like, say, Rambly from Indigo Park. Say hello, Rambly!
Hello, Rambly!
Ah, we do love a callback on this show. Okay, that is a pretty interesting combo, but there's just one problem. I mean, look at me. Do I look like I've ever played a sport on purpose? Yeah, I'm gonna be real with you. I don't know the first thing about sports. So keep in mind that what I come up with here is based on pretty limited knowledge. Anyway, I started my search for ideas by looking up existing sports team mascots, and there are basically no common threads with these things. They come in all shapes and sizes, and they don't always even make a whole lot of sense. And at first I thought to myself, you can't just make a guy with the ball for a head, that's stupid and lazy. And then I discovered Mr. and Mrs. Met. The New York Mets mascots are exactly that. People wearing smiling baseball-shaped heads. At first I just kind of wrote it off, but then I noticed the way that the seams on the ball strategically avoid going anywhere near the eyes and mouth. No doubt because if they didn't, it would end up looking kind of weird and unsettling. And that's when I thought of taking a baseball mascot, having the seam go right through the eye, and then ripping it open. From here, the design basically invented itself, to be perfectly honest. It was just a matter of drawing a baseball player, giving him some cartoony gloves and a ball for a head, and then further exaggerating Mr. Met's facial features. You know, give him rounder eyes, a bigger smile, make him look a little too happy, like most mascots. Now remember, we're trying to create a guy that's actually more helpful than he appears here, so we need for him to look sympathetic and non-threatening, but still just weird and creepy enough that you can't be quite sure of that at a first glance. And there is no better way to do that than to make him look like he's been mauled by something way worse. Tear the ball open and let the viewer see the ball stuffing sticking out, like brains on a zombie. Oh, gruesome stuff. And where'd his eye go? Who knows? Maybe it's an item you have to find in the game. And speaking of the game, this one will begin with a line that has started many a real-life horror story. Everything was going great, and then we got a new boss. I want you to imagine a small local baseball team. They have their mascot, they have some fans, but no real big league aspirations. They're just enjoying their game. Then, one day, the team gets a new owner. And he wants more, seeing the team's satisfaction with their lot as a lack of ambition and drive. So, intent on getting the best out of his team, he decides to give them an experimental performance-enhancing drug. Unfortunately for him, he's managed to land ownership of a team full of straight shooters that would never ever stoop to doping. And when the team's mascot, affectionately called Curveball, catches wind of this whole idea, he reports it to the team's coach and insists that they should contact the authorities. But the coach just laughs it off, knowing that none of his players would ever take a strange drug, and assumes that the owner will forget all about this silly idea soon enough. So the mascot reluctantly accepts this and just waits for the whole thing to blow over. And that turns out to be a mistake. Then, on the day of a big game, knowing there may be talent scouts in the audience, The coach takes matters into his own hands and secretly puts the drug in his players' water. And at first, it works. They hit better. They run faster. They catch better. They're having the strongest game they could have ever imagined, and everything looks great. Until the moment the players start dying. One by one, right in the middle of the game, right there in the field, the players start keeling over and dying after vomiting up a strange colored liquid. The coach, putting 2 and 2 together, rushes to the owner's office, finding him already packing up his things and trying to escape accountability. They get into a fight, and the fight turns fatal for both of them. The story breaks, it becomes a huge scandal, the stadium is closed, and the town has a brand new local cautionary tale to tell. And that's when the player wakes up. Are they the team's water boy? Are they the one player who didn't drink the water? Or are they just a sports fan looking for memorabilia? Who's to say? What they do know is that all the exits are blocked, the stadium has become weird and hell-like, and they keep catching glimpses of something that looks like Curveball prowling in the dark. Now, in terms of thinking of this as an actual game, I imagine it like a sort of top-down Zelda-esque cartoony deal, similar to games like, say, Binding of Isaac or #Blood, with lots of open spaces and other baseball-themed monsters to fight. So really, the game would not so much try to actually be scary as it would simply be horror sports themed. I actually did scribble down a few potential bosses based on baseball terms I looked up, which are meant to represent the owner's ideal players. Like a guy with baseball launchers on his shoulders, a guy on fire who runs around the field at high speeds, someone with a large catcher's mid-hand, so on and so forth. I mean, what can I say? Baseball gives me a lot of fun options. I like to imagine that with Curveball's help, the player has to search through the stadium to find his lost eye, and then throw it like a baseball right at the spirit of the team's owner in an epic last boss battle. Is it stupid, over the top, and completely bonkers? Why, yes, but it also sounds like a boatload of fun to me. So, all in all, I'm pretty happy with the creation of a character I like to call Coach Curveball. Oh man, we got off to kind of a crazy start, but now it's time to throw some dice and see what our next mascot is gonna be like. Well, for this one it looks like things are going to be pretty straightforward, because we landed on a toy or game mascot based on an animal that will be acting simple-minded and beastly. Now, while I'm not trying to reinvent the mascot horror genre here, I do like to try and think of terms of what I haven't seen being done yet. So for this one, I wanted to do 2 things. I wanted a toy that I don't remember seeing adapted, you know, something outside of the Furbies, the dolls, or the Betty Spaghettis, and I wanted a slightly unusual protagonist. But then I remembered that when I was a kid, one of my neighbors had this toy parrot that could repeat phrases back at you. Like you'd press a button, say, "Polly want a cracker," and then it would like move its wings a little and open its beak and say, "Polly want a cracker" right back. It wasn't a particularly great toy or anything, but it's one I remember pretty vividly. Okay, so now we have the toy. But how about the protagonist? Well, in Mascot Horror Games, the protagonists are usually adults who are in some way intruding on a child's world, like someone exploring an old theme park, a parent in a kindergarten, a security guard at a kid's entertainment facility, or something like that. And on the occasion where you do play as a child, you're usually playing someone innocent who has become the target of something evil, or someone who just made a simple childish mistake. But what if we mess with those tropes for a bit? What if you're not playing a good little boy or girl? What if you're playing as a total spoiled brat who's getting a taste of their own medicine? With these ideas in hand, I imagined your stereotypical spoiled little rich daddy's girl you'd see in cartoons. You know the type. The girls who live in huge mansions, always get everything they want, have a monthly allowance bigger than a down payment on a house, and who have rooms decked in expensive toys and all the pink princessy nonsense you can imagine. Now the toy we're going to be focusing on is one I call Gimme-Gimme the Magpie. A mechanical pink and purple bird covered in hearts, little gemstones, and other tacky crap that you play with by giving it little gems and jewelry to eat when it says "Gimme Gimme." I know that sounds awful, but if you were a kid in the 80s and 90s, you know that this isn't even that far removed from how some girls' toys were marketed. I mean, heck, I can just hear the commercial right now. Gimme Gimme, the pretty birdie who likes shiny things just as much as you do. Ugh, I think I vomited a little just writing that. So, okay, we have an overpriced, tacky, and plasticky little piece of junk with a glorified voice box. Now, how do we turn this into a monster? Well, allow me to dig up a bit of my own country's culture for this one. Have you ever heard of the H.C. Andersen fairy tale, The Nightingale? In this fairy tale, a Chinese emperor hears the singing of a nightingale and loves it so much that he ends up taking the bird as a pet. However, one day he receives a bejeweled mechanical nightingale, And he can make that one sing whenever he wants just by winding it up. He loves the damn thing and basically starts to neglect the real Nightingale, who leaves in a huff. Then, when the mechanical Nightingale inevitably breaks, the Emperor enters a state of depression that is slowly killing him, until the real Nightingale returns and sings once more, restoring his spirits and bringing him back to health. It's a story about how you can't command natural beauty and shouldn't try to replace it with material things, and that seems like a pretty good fit for the themes we've got going so far. But then, why did I choose a magpie instead of a nightingale? Well, that's because magpies are stereotyped as liking to steal shiny things for their nest. And remember, Gimme-Gimme is the pretty birdie who likes shiny things just as much as you do. So I imagine that one night, our spoiled little girl wakes up, seeing that Gimme-Gimme's cage is nowhere in her room. And that's because it's out in the mansion hallways. It has grown larger. It has longer legs that are no longer fastened to its little perch. Its wings now unfold like a Swiss army knife, with each large feather being a huge, sharp and scary looking blade. It wears its old gilded cage around its head, like some perversion of a crown, literally having grown too large and greedy to be contained inside of it. So it has become this monstrous, perverted mirror image of the little girl, a huge, greedy beast that can no longer be contained, and is just constantly seeking out new shiny things to play with. Which I realize is very on the nose, but let's be real here. Mascot horror isn't exactly known for being subtle. And now it prowls the house, searching for its owner, suddenly shouting "Gimme Gimme" when it sees her and starts the chase. And while it searches for her, it keeps repeating the phrases said by a spoiled child who's accustomed to getting what she wants at all times. Gimme it. I want it. It's mine. You can't have it. Stuff like that. And I'm sure you have some questions about this story. I mean, why did Gimme-Gimme come to life? Why is it now so large and monstrous? And what exactly did this girl do to deserve this? I don't really think it matters. This is a fairy tale, and Gimme-Gimme is the troll that wants to eat the princess. Sweet dreams, everybody. Alright, I like to think that I managed to take something that could have been pretty stock and make it decently unique. But I rolled the dice for one more character, and let me just say, this one is both the most innocent looking and by far the darkest I've come up with for this video, so consider yourself warned right now. This time the dice landed on a human mascot for a children's program that has a tragic personality. Think something similar to like Amanda the Adventurer for this one. But I found that I just couldn't think of a famous kids franchise that hasn't already gotten the horror treatment. I mean, people have done Sesame Street, Dora the Explorer, Blue's Clues, Mr. Rogers. But then I started thinking about types of children's entertainment that you don't actually see that much anymore. Like, say, safety PSAs. If you didn't grow up with these, you've probably laughed at them on YouTube. These awkward moments where a cartoon character suddenly turns to the camera and tells you to not play with matches, not to do drugs, etc, etc. They were a well-intentioned but accidentally hilarious result of an insistence of inserting moral lessons into kids' entertainment at the time. And then the stranger danger scare happened and everybody started worrying about kidnappers. So PSAs were made where your favorite cartoon characters would tell you to beware of strangers, to let your parents know if someone tried to do anything inappropriate, to just say no. I mean, say it with me, Sonic. That's no good. Now let me just make something very clear right now. I'm not trying to make light of the subjects that these PSAs were supposed to tackle, and this character will not go the dark route that you're probably thinking of right now. I just want to get that out there. They had their hearts in the right place, don't misunderstand me. But the truth is, they just didn't work. Because they were shown in children's programming, they only rarely directly addressed exactly what they were warning about and had to be really vague about it. They also ran on the incorrect assumption that strangers were the problem, when the unfortunate truth is that most kidnappings and abuse happen much closer to home. And while there are a few good stories out there about these PSAs inspiring kids to speak up, more often than not they just made kids and parents alike afraid of interacting with anyone they didn't know for any reason, including when they needed help. There's a reason you don't really see these PSAs anymore. There's a pretty good argument to be made for them ultimately doing more harm than good. So with all that cleared up, I started thinking about the idea of a PSA that fails to deliver its message because reality is just so much more complicated. And that's when the idea started coming to me. I want you to imagine a cartoonist living in the 80s. He creates a character who he calls Careful Clara to be the star of a series of safety PSAs based on his own experiences constantly having to watch over his own young daughter and making sure she doesn't hurt herself. The premise of these PSAs is simple. Clara will be out exploring and will then be about to engage in a dangerous act, like say petting a strange animal or playing in a dangerous area. Right before things can go wrong, Clara then hears her trusty dog Watch Out Wayne bark out a warning about the danger. At this point, Clara then remembers her mother's safety advice. She then declares the dangerous act she was about to perform as bad news and corrects herself, getting safely through her day with no harm done. Rinse and repeat for whatever subject you need to cover. These shorts are a success. Such and such is bad news becomes a well-known catchphrase, and Clara is now a popular PSA character, similar to someone like Smokey the Bear or Scruff McGruff. And then, like already mentioned, the Stranger Danger scare happens. Clara's creator is brought on to create a short titled Strangers Are Bad News. But while he's working on it, things are taking a turn for the worse at home. The animator and his wife are in the midst of a separation that leads to a constantly escalating custody battle. That sadly turns fatal. Clara and her mother are both found dead, and the animator completely vanishes off the face of the earth. The case is never truly solved, but the assumption is that it was a custody kidnapping gone wrong, and that the father simply escaped before the police could find him. But there are stories circulating about the place. People claim to sometimes see a little girl peering out from the windows only to hide whenever she's spotted. Some folks say they hear growling from a dog that is nowhere to be seen. And some neighbors swear up and down that at night they see dark figures in long coats and hats observing the house, only to then completely disappear once you look away. Now enter your character. Maybe a relative of the family who wants to know the truth, or just an animation lover who's heard that there are unfinished sketches somewhere inside the house. Whatever the case, you break in, and that's when all hell breaks loose. I imagine this game is a realistic looking first-person 3D ordeal, where you routinely catch a glimpse of this cutesy 2D animated little girl who keeps running away when you approach, saying that you're a stranger and that she's afraid of you. But of course, she's not going to be the only thing in there. Her dog Wayne patrols the halls, and he turns into a more realistic, vicious-looking guard dog whenever he catches sight of you. And sometimes you even see strange stylized figures in coats and hats. Nondescript shadowy strangers lurking in the house, hands stretched out ready to catch whoever they come across. You see, I like to imagine that in the Clara shorts, Clara and Wayne are the only actually detailed characters, while everyone else is represented by these hyper-stylized concepts more than actual people. You know, to sort of go with the whole presenting reality as more simple than it is idea. This even extends to stuff like police officers, who I also imagine as similar shapes with blinkers on their helmets that may charge you on sight. Just a few random ideas. Now, with this imaginary game, I want to convey that you're not in a cartoon world like you are in the other two, and that Clara is an in-universe cartoon in an otherwise realistic setting. So instead of just drawing the character, I decided to turn this into an ad hanging on a brick wall, and then I made a strategic little tear to insinuate something much more sinister going on. I really like this picture way more than I thought I would. I think it might be one of the most fire things I've made all year. It just has such a creepy mood to it. And I truly think that there's an interesting story to be told about careful Clara and the truth behind the strangers in her home. But I want to know what you think. Which one of these mascots was your favorite? Would you play their games? And is there some kind of mascot you'd love to see get the horror treatment sometime? Tell me all about it in the comments below, and don't forget to like and hype the video and subscribe to the channel in order to be the first one to know when a new art video drops. And until that happens, have a happy Halloween, everybody. Try not to choke on the candy out there. See you in the next one, and bye bye.